according to the.
What is up, Comic Book Theater Podcast? It's your host, kind of sub-hosting this time, Mike Palmer here, coming at you. We got John Lee Reynolds right down over here. We got Chris Pennybacker. We got he's got the gauntlet and everything ready to rock and roll, boys. John, if you want to start it off, mention about what we're going to be talking about this time in this podcast.
Right on, man. Thank you so much, Mike, for setting in for Todd for this podcast. Guys, we have a banger for you guys, for real. This is the Avengers Endgame podcast. We are going to be talking all things Avengers Endgame for the first 15 minutes here. We're going to be doing reviews as far as no spoilers. We're going to talk generally about it. We're going to just kind of ease some things in as far as our general opinions on how it went, those kind of things. We're then going to give you a 30-second warning. After that 30 seconds is up, if you are still listening to the podcast at that point and we spoil something for you, that's your fault, not ours. 30 seconds is plenty of time for you to find the off button of the podcast, hit pause, that kind of thing, and get gone so that then you can go watch this amazing movie and come back and finish the podcast, and you can tell us where we were right and where we were wrong. Sounds fair to everybody. I knew it would. Good deal. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you, man. And remember, spoiler free. I want to hear what you had to think about the movie.
Oh, being a huge Thanos fan, I absolutely loved Infinity War, but this one, there's just not enough good things that I can say about it. Like, it was well balanced, as all things should be.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that was part of what you brought with you today. I have to agree. This was a really well balanced movie, as far as you're going to laugh where you're supposed to laugh. Even if you're not an overly emotional person, but you're invested in the Marvel universe, you're going to cry where you're supposed to cry, and you're going to cheer where you're supposed to cheer.
Absolutely.
I mean, that I gather that we kind of all feel that way. Now, was it a completely perfect movie? There may be like two things I would tweak, and I'm not going to get into what those things were until we get into our spoilers. But I think there are two things I would tweak in the movie. But dude, for a 3-hour movie to only have two things that I would tweak, not change, tweak. Dude, man, come on. What more could you ask? I mean, really, seriously, Mike, what is there do you think anything that you would really change or tweak about the movie? And again, spoiler free, but
I honestly think the pacing of the film was fantastic, although I feel like if you watched this and Infinity War back to back, it would be perfect also. But that would give you like a 5.5 hour film all together in one, and but it's perfect. It just comes right up after it, and the pacing was great. The acting's phenomenal. The writing, I absolutely loved it. For me, this is just a subjective type of thing. I feel like sometimes there's a little too much humor, maybe in some inappropriate parts where I want it to be more serious, but that's just a small nitpick of mine with a lot of the MCU films. But it's no big deal. Honestly, I would rate the movie probably a 9.5 out of 10. And like you said, couple of minor gripes here and there, but the journey, the journey of the entire film and the entire saga of the MCU leading up to this is perfect, and it hit every single note pretty much.
I agree. And like you say, with mine are just tweaks. And the other thing too is, I don't think it is spoiler to say that if you followed the MCU, you know the direction that it's going, as far as news that they've given to us, interviews that have happened, even my tweaks. I knew some of it was coming. You know what I mean? As far as there was the writing was on the wall. You knew kind of the direction that things were going to go. And if you weren't going to get down with that, chances are really high you were going to nitpick the movie to death anyway, and it wasn't going to be. Um, it always floors me that there's a certain segment of the population, especially, it feels like especially comic book nerds, that want to nitpick things that they should be enjoying. They want to nitpick it and they want to find some fault in it. And look, man, again, not perfect movie, but my word, man, such a good, like you said, Mike, a good journey that we all went on over the last 22 movies in 10 years. You know, that kind of thing. It was just one of those where I don't think you could have asked much more of Marvel at that point. Um, I you know, like you say, the cinematics, CGI, all of those things were awesome. I'm trying to think here of where else we can go here on this. Um, Chris, did you have any like tweaks or minor complaints that are non-spoiler related?
I think to keep it non-spoiler related, I think I can word it in just a way. Um, you said you had at least two things to tweak, and you know it's funny you said that figure because like as soon as you said that, I started thinking and replaying things in my mind, and you know I would have at least maybe at best two things I changed myself, and one of those was seeing it play out in front of me, and it was right at the at the big part, you know, in the one
Yeah,
part of the movie, and the one character is standing by himself, and Thanos is looking at him, and I was just hoping that finally he was going to say it, and it was an Infinity Gauntlet when all in the comic book. This isn't the movie, the comic book,
right,
where
right,
all the superheroes met their demise. Doctor Strange was hung by his cape. Uh, Cyclops had the cube around his head and suffocated. Um, Cap was standing in front of Thanos, and he said, "Thanos, as long as one person is standing in front of you, you will never have complete uh, victory." And then Thanos looks upon him and says, "Noble sentiments from the one who's about to die." I was hoping something like that was going to happen, where we got the verbiage from the comic book, kind of like in Civil War, where Sharon Carter said the whole spiel about planting yourself like a tree next to the river of truth. But even
right.
though we all know in the comic book, Cap said that. I was just hoping that we were going to get something like that. But what we ended up getting, like, I actually stood up in a chair
Oh
with
yeah,
my gauntlet on.
right
I,
on.
it was one of those moments, man, where like seeing that movie play out, you know, and it was just like it was like that was like my inner child coming out because you know my you know, and probably hundred hundreds of comic book fans will say Infinity Gauntlet is one of the best story arcs like ever done. But it's like one of my favorite stories. It has always been one of my stories, my favorite story. And just seeing it play out and actually saying that, you know, as a kid I read that story, but then as a grown up I got to see it play out in front of me in the cinematic experience. Like I just can't believe that I got to experience that. you know? And even though it wasn't like the exact same thing, you know, it was just, I'm still like riding the high off of that movie. And I saw it last night.
Oh, right on, right on. And Mike, you saw it last night too, right?
Yeah, I saw it in the middle of the afternoon when it was supposed to be the most dead, and it wasn't. But
Oh yeah, with it slated to be getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million on opening weekend, domestically only, the chances of it being dead at any point this weekend are about zero, honestly.
yeah,
But you know, along those lines too, I don't think it's out of I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Avengers Endgame could break the record that's set for all-time box office draws by Avatar. I really don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities, guys. There things that I'm reading online and have been reading through the morning, this morning, and stuff like that. It's tracking to have between 950 million worldwide open and $1 billion worldwide open for this weekend. That's unheard of. You do that, and there's a really, really good possibility you break Avatar's record. I think they're at 2.7 billion or something. I would have to look that up, and I apologize that I didn't look that up. I should have. I knew we were going to talk about this kind of thing, but so here's another good non-spoiler question for both of you. I'll start with you, Mike.
sure.
Is this a movie that you would go to see a second time in the theater?
Absolutely. And I saw this in IMAX 3D, and in IMAX 3D, uh, it was so beautiful and amazing and immersive that I totally would spend another ridiculous amount of money to see it again. $17 for a ticket, you know. So, but it was worth it, and but it was a 3 hour long movie, so I had to make sure I didn't eat or drink a whole lot before I went, and then after I got dinner, and man, was I really feeling it afterwards. I was like, man, this is what drinking water is like again, you know? So you got to prepare
Right.
yourself and your body. It's kind of hilarious, but I would totally see it again and go
Right.
through all of it again.
Yeah. For me personally, the 3 hour thing with the not going to the bathroom and all that, I think that was a little overdone. And there's a part of me that's sadistic enough that I wonder if somebody wasn't trying to do one of those social experiments on the rest of us, being like, okay, we're going to tell everybody that's impossible to hold your bladder for 3 hours. Let's see how many people have to get up and go. You know what I mean? Like, there's a part of me that thinks that might have been what's going on. I don't know. That probably not. But Chris, I'm going to ask you too, man. Is this a movie you would go see a second time in theater?
Man, I'll tell you what, does Jeffrey Beebe have a long ass beard? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I would go see it a second time. I go see it a third time. I'm already making plans to take my wife because she wants to see it. She couldn't go with me last night. I flew solo, and I was the last seat in that theater, and it was a 6:45 showing. And I mean, I would go again, and then I got 4 kids, and they want to see it. I'm going to take them. I take the old woman I live next door to. I take her and her freaking husband. You know, I'm saying, let's take the whole street. Let's just make it up.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. So now something else, and this is something that I think has gotten kind of mixed reviews, and I'm not sure how I personally feel about it, but I want to kind of ask you guys. Some comic shops have been buying out tickets for showings for opening weekend and then offering those tickets for sale, not for sale, but rather as gifts to people who come in and buy a certain amount of books or merch from them in the shop and then giving the tickets to them. Now, having said that, there've been, like I said, there've been mixed reactions to that. Some people feel as though that they're scalping tickets because they're telling, the one that I saw for sure, that I saw myself, was buy $40 worth of merch from them and we'll give you a ticket. If you buy 80, you get 2 tickets, okay? That kind of thing. And so, again, I personally have a little mixed emotions about that because, I, on the one side, I want the local comic shops to benefit from whatever they can and to stay afloat, those kind of things. On the flip side, I can see where people might be a little miffed that they bought all of the tickets for one theater up for one showing and are then saying, well, you can have these, but you have to buy extra from us. I don't know. Do you guys, Mike, I'll start with you again here. What are your feelings on a shop doing something like that?
Honestly, I think it's a brilliant marketing tactic done by them. I think, hey guys, come into our shop. We are a comic book shop, and we're promoting the movie. And you come in, and we got the books based off. The movies are based off the books and all that. They didn't have to go buy all the tickets for one showing. I think that's a little ridiculous, and I feel like may not be cost effective to do that. I get it's a good gesture towards getting business and the people that already go to the shop and already spending money and stuff like that. That's cool. Like you said, I do feel a little mixed about it, but hey, if it works for them, it works for them. It's really kind of difficult to judge that one or to decide, but it's a brilliant marketing move, yet they didn't need to buy all the tickets for one showing. You could have maybe even bought half the tickets, and the other half people could still come in and see. And if nobody bought tickets from the shop through merchandise, then everybody else has got extra room who's going to see that showing. So,
Well, that's true too. That's true too. Like I say, I have mixed emotions because I can see it from both sides. Like you say, you're limiting the amount of tickets available. You're cornering the market for that showing. On the flip side of it, yeah, man, I look, just a real quick personal thing for me here in Springfield, Missouri. There's one of the shops that I go to here locally. They just announced yesterday they're closing up their doors. They're going to start their liquidation sale on pre-comic book day, and they're done. And the truth of the matter is, they've been around for like 10 or 11 years, and finally the comic book industry caught up to them, and they couldn't continue to make things work.
Yeah.
So Chris, I'm going to ask you too, man. I just kind of, like I say, one of those deals, ask you, how do you feel about a comic shop doing this?
Well, it's kind of like the understanding of seeing it from the two sides. I totally get that. But at the same time, personally, I'm trying hard to not, pigeonhole this as, this is just another flipping tactic, because the industry is flooded with flippers to begin with. And like, there's a shop talk about local shops. There's a shop that I go to sometimes, just to dig through their dollar bins or their back bins, whatever. And if it's like a variant, they already upcharge it automatically. Like, there was a art germ on the shelf, and it was, cover price, what, like, $4.99 or something. Just because it was an art germ, they want almost $15 for the cover. You know what I mean? And then the Greg Horn War of the Realms van variant that everybody has seen, they wanted $15 for that just because it was a variant and everything. And then but around here in my area, no shops have done that with the movie tickets for Infinity War. So I haven't heard of that happening, but and like I said, I'm just trying to not pigeonhole that like, oh, flippers and that's what's wrong with, I'm trying not to do that because
Right.
If a shop feels the need to do that, then maybe perhaps you're going, you do you, boo boo. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, like, you know, like what Palma was saying, like maybe instead of like buying out a whole bunch of tickets for a showing, why not, like, have like 2 or 4 on hand, and then, like, like, hey, do some kind of like thing where it's like, I don't know, some kind of like contest or something, get people in, you know what I mean? Like, hey, first X amount of people, tickets to to Endgame, you know what I mean? It's, something like that, you know what I mean? Instead of like, just trying to make money off of something.
Right.
You know what
Well, I kind of think that it would have been better for them to do the promotional bit in conjunction with the theater, possibly something like that. I think they could have went about it a much different way. But I also know, and this is something that we won't get into a whole lot, but I understand this to be the case too, that basically movie theaters are, we think that local comic book shops are barely hanging on by a thread. Some of those movie theaters, even though they're Regal or they're Alamo Draft House or they're any of these other Warenberg whatever movie theaters, they're barely hanging on by a thread too. If it's something where it is a movie that they must carry, the studios hold them over a barrel, and that information is out there on the internet for sure. That if it's going to be a blockbuster, they absolutely hold the theaters over a barrel, and the theaters are. I want to say that I read somewhere the theaters are even having to give them a cut of the popcorn. You know what I mean? To make sure that they get the Avengers Endgame in theater, and that might be a little extreme, but I mean, I like you say, I know the information's out there. I've seen it. I've read it myself, but I know it's hard for us as comic book nerds to really fathom that another industry is getting raked over the coals the same way that the LCSs are.
And that's a real shame. I'm a big theater fan and a cinema file, and I feel like that's the still the best way to experience films, especially these kinds of films that are so larger than life. Uh, you can only really truly experience it in a theater, and that's a shame too when it has to get like that. But that's like a
I
whole
agree.
other topic too for another.
It sure is.
podcast.
It sure is. And actually, guys, I think that this is a great time for us to segue away from the spoiler-free portion of the show. If you give me just a second here, I'm going to put a timer on for the 30 seconds so that we make sure that we are not, I don't want to go over, but I don't want to go under either. So for those of you who are going to stick around for the spoiler segment, we're giving you 30 seconds. Just going to chill out for a little bit. That way other people can get off of the podcast. You have been sufficiently warned. If you are here when we get back from this 30-second break, it's your fault that you get it spoiled. All right, be right back, guys.
I just felt like I needed to say this. You know what I haven't had in a long time?
What haven't you had in a long time?
Big League Chew.
Big League Chew. Awesome. I am almost ready for the big reveal here. Give me just a few more minutes. Not even a few more minutes. I'm just doing a quick little check there. Everything is good. Mr. Mike Palma, when you, sir, are ready. All right, I'm ready to go. Spoilers here. Mike, Chris, ready to do some spoilers. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
All
Avengers
right.
Assemble.
Are we good?
Yeah, man, I'm good.
All
You
right.
already gave us a sneak of you.
What's up?
What's up? So, guys, we're going to spoil the crap out of everything. We're going to talk about everything. I mean, all of it. Let's do this, okay?
What's going on, bub?
Yeah. So, the very first thing that I want to ask you guys about is the literal opening scene. The opening scene. Dude.
Oh my God.
Tearjerker right off the bat, man. Holy Pete, are you kidding me?
I fought back. I made enough to admit it. I'm going to be 37 in November. I had to hold back ugly crying because they built up in all these movies. Hawkeye is a family man.
100%.
And then in Infinity War, everybody, on pages like on the Avengers Facebook page, where the hell was Hawkeye? Blah 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 blah, and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, there it is. They show you. And it's like, and it's so cool because it's like those two movies you can really watch back to back because that's like the final scene or like the final piece of Infinity War, and it's like bam, goes right into Endgame.
Agreed.
Agreed. Oh my God.
Oh no, 100%, dude. That was one of those. Now, one of my kids, I went with two of my kids and my wife. My third had to work. He's actually going to see it here. He'll be seeing it here in the next 10 minutes or so, starting it. And my youngest child says to me, Dad, I didn't cry during it. And I'm like, just so you know, if you've got kids and you watch that Hawkeye part, you're gonna cry, dude. Like I mean, there's no way around it. And then also, to me, his actions post the snap, completely and totally justified. Yes, go murder all of those fools who are still living when your family, who did nothing to nobody except for be a good family, poof, gone. All of them, not one left. All of them. So that was brutal.
Yeah,
I got a lot of Punisher vibes from it.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I freaking love.
This is a little much.
Are you a little warm?
Yeah, it's a little warm and it's covering my nose so I can barely breathe.
I don't know how guys wrestle in these, to be honest with you, but I'm going to tough mine out because, by God, I love my mask. I've had it for like 24 hours and my wife's already rolled her eyes at me like a dozen times because I'm just like I'm gonna put my mask on. It's awesome. So anyway, that's beside the point. You were saying though about the Punisher vibe. Yeah, it did have a bit of that where he just stopped giving a crap about anything other than killing all of those bad guys, man. Which was awesome. I did not necessarily foresee them going that early to Thanos after Thanos retired. What did you guys think about that? They essentially them going and executing Thanos. How do you guys feel about that part?
It was a beautiful misdirection. I loved it. It happened so fast and it was so unexpected that it really kept fans and everyone kept the viewer on the edge of their seat. And they're like, "Oh wow, we're already going into it. What? This movie's 3 hours long. How can it keep going from there?" And the the fact that the fact that it keeps you guessing and the action just happens that fast is you're like, where do you go with that? And the movie continues to take you even further than that. And the one thing that irked me though is he said he nearly killed himself by destroying the Infinity Stones. I don't ever recall and this is just the films, and we're comic book fans, so we're gonna pick it apart. But I don't ever recall the stones ever being able to be destroyed. But I thought that was interesting, and it really put everyone in a predicament, and really carried a lot of weight in the rest of the film until they developed their plan.
Yeah, that whole scene, I was thinking like, them going playing, and then I was thinking like, well, what are they going, what are they planning on doing? Like, I was like, they're not going to like lock, put him in, shackles and chains like Loki in the first Avengers. It's Thanos. He's too strong for that. But I actually was thinking like, someone's going to off him. But how they did it, um, it was so funny whenever Thanos later in the movie said, that's prophecy fulfilled. Like I was like, fucking A it is. Because of any celestial being trying to destroy the Infinity Stones, after he did what he wanted to do, Thanos would. Whether that would be in comic book form or in the movie, because he set out what he wanted to do and he wants to keep it that way. You know, uh, I kind of liked hearing that he tried to destroy the Infinity Stones because he didn't want it to be unmade, undone. He wanted his way to stay. And I just love how they've been playing Thanos in these two movies, man. Oh my god.
Thanos was a much better big bad than I originally thought he was going to be, and that's not to say that I didn't think he had the source material to be a good big bad, but he, how can I say this? I You see him sitting on the throne, you see him smile, you're like, okay, he's becoming a little ominous or whatever, but is he really? Are they? How are? There was some questions there with me personally at first. Now, having said that, I will say that I was okay with a lot. Some people complained that there was too much exposition, too much planning, too much blah 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 during the first half of the movie. I personally didn't find it that way. I personally like a movie that ebbs and flows. It has high and low spots where it's supposed to. You have to have those low, slow moving spots so that when the highs come in, they it accentuates them more. It puts more of a crescendo on it. And as opposed to just having a movie that starts slow here and then builds straight to the crescendo and then a small little after just to clean up whatever part of the story didn't cleanly end at the peak of the story. I like a story that kind of ebbs and flows a little bit, like we talked about. Very emotional beginning. Oh my gosh, they're going right at Thanos right now. What the heck? This is a 3-hour movie.
Yep.
And then, so they started off kind of that high. They dipped down into a low and a slow, and okay, we got to methodically plan this out. We're going to build some character here and there of people. I also think it was a good way for them to make us care about Black Widow more than just being eye candy, frankly. I believe in a lot of the movies, she's basically been eye candy. And I mean, Winter Soldier, they helped you care about her a little bit more. And then this was the end of that where they made you care just in time to kill her off. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a good idea, frankly. I think that you do some of those things to give the movie weight, give the movie consequences. You can't undo everything. If you undo everything, then everybody looks at it and they're like, well, we invested 10 years of our lives and 22 films, and they just undid everything and we're back to square one. What the crap? You know? So there had to be consequences. Um, what do you guys think about the slow, like you say, there was a slow part. I think we all agree on that. How do you feel about the slow part?
I really think the slow part was needed. I really think that the fact that the movie was as long as it was to give it time to breathe was perfect. To really show the weight of what happened to the world after the snap, to the characters and to the world and to everybody. It was needed to have that character development and that world development. So all of that really, it had to happen in order for you to have that weight in you to care about them and just to see where everybody is at and see who's still holding up, who's able to still hold up. And it looks like my favorite character, Cap, was still optimistic even after all of it. By the way, in the scene where he is talking to the survivors after the snap, did you guys notice the cameo in that talking scene with the survivors?
Yes.
I knew it was an artist, but I couldn't remember who it was. Like I knew
Jim
I should.
Starlin.
That's right. That's right. I'm like, I know that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy. And then I couldn't pull him up even after you said that. I knew, and still couldn't pull him up. There, I do like the fact that they had cameos in there. I think it's good, man. I think it's good to
Yeah.
get some of these guys recognition that they deserve for putting in the time and the effort that they have throughout the years.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, um, we've had our Stanley cameos and stuff like that, and I think he's really the one of the first. I can't recall. I feel like there has been somebody else in other the films, maybe like the X-Men films, but I feel like this could also pave way for other creators to make cameos in films, and it's more of like an Easter egg to the actual fans than just like, oh, everybody knows who Stan Lee is, but not everyone knows who Jim Starlin is, or if they introduce the X-Men and they put like say Chris Claremont or a bunch of other guys, they're gonna be like, who's that? But for us, I feel like that's a little fun, little hey, we know who that is. And it was just kind of beautiful. But the pacing itself too, uh, it needed it. Those slow parts didn't feel slow at all and didn't affect the film negatively in any way.
I I agree with that wholeheartedly. One of the other complaints, and again, these are not my complaints. I'm going based off of some social media reactions and spoiler threads. Now, mind you, on the collector's corner, completely spoiler free for 2 weeks. That's the standard that we've set there because, dude, not everybody can get there as quick as the three of us did. That's the other reason why we wanted to do the first part spoiler free too. Give some folks some content, some encouragement. Go see this. We're not going to spoil it, but now we're spoiling everything. What I'm going to ask you guys. Most people are going to say that the overall battle scene is some aspect of the battle scene is likely their most favorite scene in the movie. So I'm going to ask you for the first half of the movie, think about the slower part. Do you have a scene or a situation there that you found to be most compelling? Because I'll tell you, for me, it was Scott Lang seeing his own name having been disappeared, and then finding his daughter, and that was, again, it was very emotional as as a father having that situation with your child. um so that one was pretty emotional for me personally, and probably my favorite my favorite aspect there. And by the way, that's something else that these Avenger films have done for me personally. I care a lot more about Avengers that before these movies I couldn't have given a crap about at all. They didn't do it for me at all. And now I find myself caring what happens with Ant-Man. So Chris, I'm going to ask you any Avengers that you care about now that you didn't care about before, and also during the slow part, we'll get to the wars, the battle scene and stuff in a second. During the slow part of the movie, any part of that that you enjoyed a lot more than others?
Yeah, man. You know, you took one of mine away whenever you mentioned about Scott Lang. Seeing his name on the vanished list, and then seeing his daughter, and I mean, it was the perfect Scott Lang line to say, grabbing her face and saying, "You're so big," you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Another thing was let's just applaud the Russos for how beautifully shot this movie was. Like whenever he's tugging along his little cart of stuff, and then the neighborhood is just distraught, and then there's a kid riding his bike, and he says, "Yo, kid, what happened here?" It had very much that little scene kind of reminded me of neighborhood scenes in Walking Dead, where it's just like the scope of the environment is just bigger than the Avengers facility in upstate New York. You know what I mean? It really drove that home. And then one I really enjoyed, man. Me and homages. You know what I'm saying? Whenever whenever Brie Larson is flying the ship on her back, and then they land, and then they're bringing Tony Stark out. It had the same feel of Tony Stark coming back to America in the first Iron Man, whenever he was rescued and everything, and he was all whatever, and then they tried to bring out the stretcher, and he was like, "Oh, get that crap away," It had
Right.
very much the same feel, and then and then what I liked about it though was in the first movie, he's coming down off the plane and he sees Pepper and he says, "You have tears for your boss," and then she says, "Tears of joy because I want to get paid now." But on this one, she's ugly crying because he's alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I was like,
Absolutely.
I was like, that's I like that.
Right on, right on. Mike, any Avengers now that you care about that you did not care about before, or any parts of the slow part of the movie that you found more compelling than others?
I've so there's never been an Avenger that I never really hadn't cared for. I really grown close with Scott Lang, not necessarily from Ant-Man, but from Ant-Man and the Wasp. That was just a brilliant film in general. Excuse me. But my favorite slow parts, yes, was the Scott Lang part and him coming out and figuring out the world. But I think what trumps that for me is going to be Tony Stark dealing with the idea, hey, guys, we have time travel. And he's just like, yeah, but you know how dangerous that is? And him really contemplating all of that and him building his relationship. He has a daughter now. And that really, even though I'm not a parent, that really had a lot of weight with me too as well. And just he realized how much was on the line for him. He's like, all of you guys have it rough, and I thought I had it rough, but now I have a family. I'm having the things that I've wanted for such a long time and I've dreamed of, and I don't want to lose that. And him calculating the risks, and of course, being the genius he is, finds a safe way to make time travel a thing. Kind of just was kind of cool and everything, but just the interactions between him and Pepper and him and his daughter is what really did it for me. And he's like, all right, now we're going to do time travel.
Yeah, yeah. him floating that by Pepper before going to anybody else felt really true to the character of Iron Man there in that situation for sure. Um, yeah, my daughter said that the "I love you 3000." Of course, little kids say stuff like that. They may not say that exact phrase, but they say that. And she said she was sitting on the other side of my wife from me, but when Tony Stark then at the end there during the ceremony when he's talking to his daughter, telling her he loves her 3000, yeah, yeah, you could hear some ugly crying from all over the theater at that point, because that, I mean, again, what of us doesn't want to be able to tell people after you passed away to go back and reassure them that you love them, what you're doing was for them, that kind of thing. So yeah, that was a tearjerker part too. um I will say that somebody said that they should have ended it with Tony Stark's funeral ceremony. I totally disagree with that. You have to give Cap his ending too. There were multiple characters that needed some closure.
Mm-hmm.
And those two definitely needed closure. And those actors want to go on and do other things. I totally understand that. I actually would love it if Cap came back and uh played the Human Torch now that Marvel has the Fantastic Four back. I think that'd be hilarious. I That would make me so happy to watch everybody else's head explode over that. It's not going to happen. I seriously doubt that happens, but I would love it.
Or even a cameo.
Even a cameo, even a cameo.
Cameo, like, if they did a Fantastic Four movie and then like, how they do like the TV sets in the window showing like things happening, and then you see a blip of Human Torch flying in the air, and then you see Chris Evans, saying some crap like, what the hell's that? You know what I mean, or something like that. Like that'd be awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anything like that would be funny, and I think that Marvel gets themselves enough that may be possible in the future. I think that'd be hilarious. So we've been avoiding the battle scene on purpose because let's be honest. Did you have something else before we go there, Michael?
I got one more. So in that
Okay.
funeral scene with Tony Stark, I had it extra tough for me because I had this kid in the theater behind me, and he goes, "Wait, what's going on with Tony? Where's Iron Man? What happened to Iron Man? Where is he?" And the kid, I don't think, comprehended what death was. So it made it even more tougher for me when I'm watching that scene. It's like as if he was his kid. He's like, "Where's Dad?" And I'm just like, "Oh God, no, that's terrible." And it just, oh man, it made me like some man tears just ran down the side of my face. Let me tell you.
Oh
And
yeah.
but
Man,
also, but with Captain America and the way, uh, since we're kind of already on that subject at the end, Captain America passing on the shield, I thought was brilliant. I wanted it to be Bucky personally, but I don't see anything wrong with Falcon. I think it's going to do just great, and I feel like if they ever wanted to bring back Cap in the future, they could just, hey, here's another round of super soldier serum again, and boom, he's back to being normal if they ever brought back the character in the future. But I think it's pretty interesting that if they ever wanted Chris Evans to come back, he could be old man Cap and provide like being a teacher or something like that to Falcon, or to Bucky or whatever. So though that was part of the ending that really got me, was that little kid right behind me, a row behind me. I was just tearing up.
so I have to ask you guys. So my theater at the scene where at the end of the battle and then everything after that, my theater wasn't the only one that had people ugly sobbing. Like I'm talking, you could hear people losing their their stuff. Like, I thought it was just, the theater I was in. So, like, you guys could hear people, like, sobbing, like, losing it, crying, not just like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
wow.
Now, mind you, I members of my family are emotional when they see movies anyway. They're able to suspend that disbelief really well, and that's good. They enjoy movies a little more thoroughly than I do probably at that point. But I will say not it was not just my family members that were having a rough go of it during the scenes that during death scenes and stuff like that during when Iron Man was taking his last breath and the his
Arc
power
reactor.
sword, yeah, when his arc reactor goes out, yeah, man, that was rough for everybody involved for sure. No question at all on that yeah, everybody.
Now, I
There,
didn't witness or hear any kind of like crying or sobbing in my theater, but maybe it's just where I was at, or I really wasn't paying attention a whole lot. So, or we're just all cold-hearted in my area.
well, now I will say this too. There were instances where it was literally dead silent. And then there were also instances where you, like you were talking about, Chris, people standing up and cheering. Hey, look, man, when Cap started wielding Thor's hammer, dude, I almost leapt out of my seat. And I ain't gonna lie, I I almost didn't breathe for like the next 5 minutes. I was just so overjoyed, glued, not
Yep,
blinking to the screen,
yep.
just unbelievable, man. And
Oh
I
yeah.
bear with me. I I found the comic book cover that it reminded me of. It reminded me of this JLA Avengers cover here. Now, of course, not exactly, but man, that was the total feel that I got from it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they essentially just took away this from a DC Marvel crossover, and it just blew my mind. So well done. I was so happy to see that, and that's something that I got to admit I did not foresee that. Even going back to Age of Ultron, when Cap was the only one that just moved it just a smidge, and it freaked Thor out there for a second. Going back to that, you look back now and you're like, dude, maybe if Cap wasn't trying to hold it or make it move out of pride at that very moment, he might have unknowingly just walked over and picked up Thor's hammer and chucked it to him, kind of like Vision did later in the movie.
I thought that was one of the most brilliant, amazing, mind blowing. I was like, it's gonna happen. I'm saying it to myself the whole entire time. This is gonna happen. He's gonna pick up the hammer. And I love how Thor goes, I knew you were worthy, or something along those lines, It was perfect. It was beautiful. The way he handled that with the combo with the hammer and the shield. I loved it. And then the funny part was when they're both calling the hammer back, and they get the hammer swapped, and Thor's like, "Wait, I want the bigger one." You could
I
have
want
some
that
fun.
one.
Yeah,
You get the
and
little one.
I thought that was just brilliant. And oh man, I just was like, man, you better whoop Thanos' butt, man. It was brilliant. Oh man, I just was like a kid in a candy store. It was just I couldn't explain, especially with my favorite character, um, being able to just do that. It was, oh man.
Yeah.
Man, I'm speechless.
Oh yeah. So now the other one too that I want to kind of bring up here with you guys was the two things that I would change, and I'm not even saying necessarily a full blown change, maybe just a bit of a tweak. One of them is I think Professor Hulk was actually more of a totally awesome Hulk. And I'm not the only one that's felt that way. There are several people that I have heard say the exact same thing. When I read things about Professor Hulk back in the day, I will say that it felt to me whenever I was reading or listening about him that he was still grumpy. The way he was the Hulk was he was still grumpy. He was angry to a certain extent and more annoyed that other people weren't as smart as he was and those kind of things. Whereas this Hulk felt like the totally awesome Hulk of I'm just going to chill, I'm going to be cool, I'm going to take selfies with people. I'm hip, I'm cool, I'm totally awesome. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing that I would change. That initially, when I very first saw it, I'm like, oh, this is cool, but that wore out on me very, very fast. Like I don't know. It felt like they painted Mark Ruffalo green, and that was about it.
Yeah, it was a little jarring. It was a little weird, and it almost, to a degree, it almost made it feel like he was a little more dumber, I guess. And it kind of took away. I feel like it took away from his intelligence, and they kind of, like you said, I didn't think about using Totally Awesome Hulk as a reference, but that makes a lot of sense now that you said that. I was just gonna say he's MCUified, so he's a little more comedic and funny, and you know, not what I expected, but it's not that big of a gripe for me either. Do I wish it was different a little bit? Yeah. What bothered me the most was Thor being fat, even when he picked up the hammer, just being fat the whole time.
I gotta say this. My wife is not going to be happy that I share this, but this is the truth. As soon as Fat Thor showed up on the screen, the very first words out of her mouth when she turned to look at me was, "Hey, you can cosplay as that Thor." Now, mind you, my wife is a very nice, very, very straight-laced lady. As far as she doesn't like, it's common knowledge in our family that when she gets one on you, she knocks it out of the park because you're not expecting it. And I was totally not expecting it. So anybody who is pulling those kind of things up on social media talking about I'm going to cosplay as Fat Thor, literally opening night, that's what my wife said to me. I'm claiming that as our own, but it was so dang funny. And look, dude, I know I'm a big boy. Ain't no way around that. Okay, I would give Fat Thor a run for his money, frankly. The only thing he's got on me is those golden wavy locks. That's about all he's got on me. But anyway, so I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. That was like a perfect segue. I wish we'd planned that out. Chris, what anything that you would have changed that way, or do you have a strong opinion on Professor Hulk?
You know, it's funny. That would have been one of the things I would have not necessarily changed, but maybe, you know, tweaked with, played with, whatever. Because I mean, the one thing missing out of Infinity War and Endgame was seeing Hulk rip someone's ass. You know what I'm saying? Like we saw it in the first Avengers and everything. And as that battle scene goes on, if you watch it and you remember the one thing we all know about Hulk, and honestly, we all love about Hulk, is the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. And in that first battle scene of Avengers, you can see him getting stronger, which I thought was awesome from Joss Whedon. And I just kind of hate seeing, one of the coolest characters, in the biggest story of the MCU so far, you know,
Right.
not really not really being much of anything. You know?
Kind of neutered. Frankly, he was kind of neutered.
I was hoping that they were gonna, when he was under the weight of the Avengers mansion and all that, that he was gonna lose control and go full Hulk. And
That's what I was thinking.
And he didn't do it. They didn't do it, and I was so upset. I thought they were gonna go full Hulk in that moment, and they didn't.
Right. That's what I was thinking. And actually, in that scene, he actually calls for backup. And I'm like, dude, rage out and lift that thing with your pinky. You know?
Hulk doesn't do backup. Hulk doesn't do backup. That, yeah. And like you say, that's, if I were a Hulk fan, I believe that this movie would disappoint me somewhat. Not being a full-blown Hulk fan, like I know some of our listeners are.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel for him because, like you say, if you were looking for that rage monster, I can lift an entire mountain range from Secret Wars and keep everybody safe. You're not getting that. You're not. That's not going to happen. And so, too, there was actually no showdown between Hulk and Thanos, which really kind of bummed me out there too, because I really thought that he should have played a more pivotal role than he did. And I don't think it would have detracted from any of the other heroes and them taking their shots. And that includes Captain Marvel. Now, Captain Marvel, I actually think that Captain Marvel had just about the right amount of screen time. Some people are complaining that she only had, I didn't time it. If you timed it, you're not my kind of comic book fan, frankly, because the truth of the matter is if you're going to be offended by not having the proper amount of screen time down to the second, you're too nitpicky for me, okay? That's just personal opinion. I think she had the right amount of screen time as far as, yes, they showed that she was possibly the strongest, but I also like the fact that they leave that a little bit in question there because that's the way all good written comic books leave it. If Thor's not out of shape, maybe he's stronger. You know, some of these kind of things, they put those in and you want a little bit of question mark so that we can have conversations like what we have. But you know, so Captain Marvel, I think that she was okay for her screen time, but it felt like the part where Spidey had the Infinity Gauntlet and was trying to get it across the battlefield, and the most people are calling it A-Force showed up. Look, I'm okay with A-Force. A-Force is a thing. It was a comic book. I'm okay with it. But it felt forced in a battle scene to have all of your female characters glommed up just like that. It feels forced. That's the only way I can really properly put it is it felt forced. You're telling me that they all just organically showed up together in the battle scene, in the battle, all the women right in that one place. Oh yeah, and Spider-Man, but no male character. And by the way, none of them had ever really teamed up before, really, unless if you count. Well, Black Widow wasn't there because she died. We see that's the other crazy part about this is we're running really close to an hour on this conversation. We've spent at least 40 minutes of it, and we haven't even talked about Black Widow dying yet, really. We'll go for as long as it takes, guys. I'm down to sit here and talk for as long as it takes about this till we're all satisfied. But all of the female characters, it just didn't feel organic. It felt forced. I don't know if that you, Chris, you said you had two things that you would tweak or change. What was the other thing that you think you would tweak or change?
I would have, if I had my hands on the script, I would have included, aside from Cap finally calling the shout out Avengers Assemble, I would have included, him saying to Thanos when he was just standing all by his onesie, and then Thanos's army behind him. Him Cap just saying to him, as long as one man stands against you, Thanos, you'll never have complete victory. And then Thanos just saying noble sentiments from one who's about to die. Like, that is, straight from the comic book, you know what I mean? Like, straight from Infinity Gauntlet, and I would have included that. And it's just, oh, how awesome would that be? But it didn't happen. But whenever he said Avengers Assemble, I was like, all's forgiven.
Right. That was definitely one of those magic moments.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess then your other one was the Professor Hulk. That was the other tweak.
Yeah, the other tweak would have been, Hulk, man, ripping and tearing, dude.
Yeah. Get down. You're the Hulk. This is basically the end of the line. Not necessarily for the Hulk. I'm sure he'll be in other stuff, but this is the end of an arc. You want him to show up.
Yeah, and I mean his biggest, his biggest fight scene can be debated was the first Avengers movie, and that was how many years ago? You know what I mean? And I mean, yeah, he had fight scenes in Thor Ragnarok, but nowhere near the rage that people are used to and accustomed to seeing in the pages of comics than the first Avengers movie.
I think Age of Ultron contends with that too. The Hulkbuster battle was pretty dope, and then even him on Sokovia was pretty good. So I think that's another contention if we're talking Hulk battles there too.
Oh, you bring up a good point, Mike. You bring up a good point. Now I will say that I believe that the Hulk arc, if you looked at just the Hulk arc, very compelling character. I'm just not sure I like the conclusion of where he ended up.
Not at all. It's not satisfying to me.
Right. I think that they could have, and again, just like that, they could have hulked him out and then brought him back, because there was enough time at the end there for closure on going back to essentially being Professor Hulk basically full time. They could have showed that during the funeral scene. They absolutely could have. So yeah, Mike, in any things that you would have tweaked that we haven't gone over, or do you have do you have an opinion on the things that we say that we would have tweaked?
Now, the whole A-Force thing, it did feel a little forced, but it was still kind of neat. Like, oh, cool, look, A-Force shows up, for like a little cameo type of thing or whatever. But yeah, it was a little thrown in there, and I understand why, but it's not that big of a gripe. I was just like, oh, that's pretty cool. I think one thing I really, really enjoy that I don't know if anybody caught on or mentions is when Ant-Man turns into Giant Man and just punches the crap out of that giant Chitauri space snake. I don't know what you call it. I'm just going to call it a space snake. And just whacks it. And it's kind of reminiscent of when Hulk beat up the space snake in the first Avengers. The biggest question for me, and I don't know if it's just me or if a lot of people were wondering, what the heck happened with Loki and the Tesseract when they went back in time? Where did he go and what happened with that? Is that going to lead into the Loki series on the Disney Plus streaming service? Just the whole things about time travel is just, they don't want you to really think about it, and they kind of talk about it a little bit, but they don't want to go in so much detail where people are losing their minds about it. And I kind of am just a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. But it doesn't keep me up at night, but it definitely has me questioning how does time travel really work? And it was a little convoluted, but time travel is always convoluted.
Yeah. Well,
I really hope they do examine that in the show, because that would be the perfect way to do a show about Loki. Because then it's like, Because in him taking the Tesseract at that moment in time, then kind of, I don't want to say retcons everything that happened to him, you know, arc-wise in the Thor movies, but it definitely allows something for the show to, you know, have some, you know, gravitas about, you know, at least have people come, you know, coming in and wanting to check it out at the very least.
Yeah, well, and this is the other thing that we have on our side as far as being in the real world is that Tom Huddleston has already tweeted out that there will be more mischief, basically. And so, you know, we have that to review now, which is, I don't want to say it's a spoiler from him, but let's be real here. Anybody that thought that they weren't going to try and make more money off of Loki, they don't understand Disney and Marvel. That's a cash cow waiting to happen, really. And you know, they've got the Black Widow origin movie that's going to be coming out too, that will get shoehorned in there somewhere to the watching, you know, how you, the watching order, that will happen in there somewhere. um the Disney Plus WandaVision thing, that they got to come up with a better title than WandaVision. That just, there's something that's not right about that, because it sounds like they're, I don't know, it just doesn't sound right to me, WandaVision.
It
But
sounds like a type of television type of thing that you watch on
right,
television.
right, yeah. So you know, and that might just be them being, trying to be too cool for school kind of thing, and that's, if they do that, whatever. If it's a good show, eventually we won't care what the title is, to be real honest about it. But you know, like I say, if I had it to, if I had a seat at the table, WandaVision would have gotten crossed off the list, early on for sure.
Now, the thing
Dude,
that's bothering me about this is Black Widow stayed dead, okay? Vision was killed before the snap. So how are they going to bring Vision back? Are they going to rebuild him? It's a little confusing.
well, I mean, Tony had a huge hand in building him. I don't know that he can come. I think that it's going to be one of those things where it's not necessarily. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a retcon. It might just be one of those, because you got to remember they're doing What If too, the series What If on the Disney streaming. They may just take this as this is what would have happened if Vision had survived or something. They could absolutely go that route, and I would be okay with that.
I could see it being in between Civil War and Infinity War when they were on the run, kind of.
It could be, or I mean, you know,
That'd be really
be
cool.
because Wanda has the power to warp reality. In theory, she could. This, you guys stick with me here on this for a little bit. This could be her doing, and I don't think that they're thinking this deep into it. I think it'd be very cool if they went this route, but they're not going. I guarantee you, and Mike, I think you know what I'm talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Is
But
it House of M kind of related?
yes, 100%. That's where I was going with it. This is a prequel to them throwing everything into House of M, and then mutants show up on. They're just not as good as Marvel has been. They're not that good. They're
Sure.
good. They're really good. I just don't believe they're that good. If they find a way to pull that off and make House of M happen and bring in the mutants through House of M, dear Lord, we really should just let them rule the world at that point, because that's how good that would be if they went that route. I don't think they will. But man, I would be down. I would be totally down on that.
I really think they downplay her powers, though. They just make her seem like this kind of psychokinetic type of person, and like even she stood against Thanos a little bit in the A-Force cameo, but she's so much more powerful, and I wish they would do something with that, and hopefully they will. I hope so.
I think once they start to focus more on the mutants, that is a possibility. I think it's a possibility. The fact that they're not really even technically this version of the Scarlet Witch is not a mutant. I think that's part of it, but like I say, we'll see where that goes. We'll see where that goes. Um, like I say, we still haven't talked about one of the major deaths. Just barely touched on it. I truly thought that they were going to kill off Hawkeye. I thought Hawkeye was the one that was going to die on that mountain, and whenever it ended up being Black Widow, it was emotional because they had hooked me in just enough to caring about her and starting to see her develop more as a character, but it wasn't emotional the same way it was in other areas for me. And that it is what it is there. But did you guys call it that it was going to be Scarlet Witch that died there, or did they catch you guys with the misdirection that it might be Hawkeye?
I got the misdirection. I really thought it was going to be Hawkeye, and then surprisingly, Black Widow shoots that the hook thing on him, and oh man! And it wasn't her death necessarily that got me itself. It was the reactions of everyone she impacted. She was involved in Iron Man 2. She was involved in assembling the Avengers, kind of, if you think about it, with Tony. She had a relationship with Cap, not a romantic one, but she was kind of had a thing with Hulk at Age of Ultron, which was weird. But she was a part of everybody's lives, and it was so integrated, and she kind of was like the glue, essentially, and everyone reacting to that, especially Hawkeye. He's like, it was supposed to be me, uh, that's what was the kind of the tearjerker part of it a little bit.
Yeah, I
The
definitely thought it was
subversion.
going to be Hawkeye too.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you kind of felt extra hard for Clint because he had lost so much already. And the other thing too is the other reason why they got me on it was Clint in his anger and in his mourning did not go to Natasha as a friend. He went out and immediately just started murdering everything, which led me more to think that Black Widow could not, or Natasha could not be the sacrifice, because if anybody was going to be the sacrifice, it would have had to have been Clint's family, a member of a literal blood relative of Clint's. But the other reason why I thought it had to be Hawkeye was Natalia really, even with Hulk, it it always kind of felt more like a fling. Like in Age of Ultron, like you said, it was weird. It felt more like a flirty fling kind of thing that they were doing there. And
The sun's going down, big guy.
yeah, yeah, that kind of stuff. It didn't feel real. But Natasha during this movie, she made it very clear that one of the main things that she loved was Clint Barton, as far as they were that close of friends. That's how they got me. That's the hook they set into me was, well, she loves him more than anything that's left, period. And I don't think it got the same feeling the other way, but it obviously was. It just didn't. They didn't set it up the same way. So that was a death that caught me unaware, that impacted me, and I didn't think that it would. That's another sign of a great movie to me, is when somebody has something like that, a death happens, and even though you don't think it's going to be a big deal, it ends up being a big deal.
You have good writers when you could tell a story like that and really make people feel, even if they're not attached, they became attached, and yeah, it was done superbly. I don't imagine any other way it could have been done, and that finishes her arc, and it kind of gave everyone what they needed to go on for the final battle too. It was just it was kind of like the catalyst in a way to kind of give everyone that little extra oomph.
It
And
it had a big mirroring of Phil Coulson's death in the original Avengers.
oh,
That
absolutely,
that
yeah.
I think the other thing that people really love and is doesn't get its just due is when things come full circle or things have parallels. When that happens, it's very satisfying to all of us, really, whether we admit it or not. So, well, I tell you what, guys, we're approaching out here at like an hour and 20 minutes, which is by far the longest podcast that we have done.
Woo!
I want to give you guys final thoughts on Avengers. If there's something we didn't cover that you're like, dude, we didn't cover it, I've got to get this in. Let's get there, and then we'll wrap this one up. Chris, I'm going to start with you, man. Yeah, give me some final thoughts here. Give me a rating as far as on a scale of 1 to 10, the same way that we would do like a grading of a comic book, 10 being a perfect masterpiece, flawless, 9.8 being we all understand that grading scale. So give me your final thoughts and then give me a grade on the movie.
Man, I'd say if I had to do a CGC or a CDCS on it, man, with those two tweaks, that would be a point 0.2. So I would give the grading on Avengers Endgame a flat, firm 9.8. Man, I mean, and it's just awesome on how, as you said, ebbs and flows, and especially whenever they kick it into high gear for the battle scene, where everything is, birds are chirping, the sun's out and everything, and all of a sudden, death metal from above. You know what I'm saying? Oh man. I mean, it just had everything, man. I mean, it was just perfectly balanced, as all things should be. It had humor, it had the tearjerker moments, man, and it had, just enough drama, but it had the action that everyone was expecting right where it needed to be. You know what I mean? And I mean, oh, I just can't. There's just not enough good things I can say about that freaking movie, man. I mean,
I I agree. Literally, we could go on another 3 hours, honestly. So
easily.
so yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Mike, what give us a grade and give us your final thoughts.
All right. I'll give the grade at the end. My final thoughts are beautifully mastercrafted film, uh, easily and should be watched immediately after Infinity War. Paced well, direction was great, acting phenomenal. Uh, the writing and the cinematography was brilliant. Um, I had a few gripes, about Thor and about maybe a little bit about Professor Hulk and a little bit about the A-Team and the comedy misplaced, but hey, that's just little gripes here and there. Um, Overall total grade with my little gripes, and I'm a little bit more conservative on my ratings. I'm going to give it a 9.6, and I think that's a pretty fair grade with all the little gripes that I had. But it ended and completed the story arc beautifully, and I couldn't be any happier.
Right on, right on. So, and both of those are, let's be real here. Either one of those grades for this movie is it absolutely means that you got to go see the movie for sure, 100%, without question. You got to go see the movie. I will say that I the ebbs and the flows to me are things that have to be in a movie, even down to the most minute detail of pre doing the second snap, the fact that it was so silent, like we talked about before, the Walking Dead feel of just nothing going on, birds aren't chirping, nothing, and then the second snap happens, everything comes back. You start to see some of those things. The small, minute details to me made this movie. I had the two complaints: the A Force feeling forced. If they could have made that feel a little more organic, I would have loved that. And if they would have tweaked Professor Hulk just to be a little grumpy, just a little grumpy, he could still be funny occasionally, but be a little grumpy so that I feel like you're the Hulk. And then I in our discussion I found a third thing, like you guys talked about, where he should have literally hulked out, not called for backup, hulked out. That puts me still with those three things. I'm still going to give it a 9.8 because I can't see how they would have, knowing what Marvel is and what they do, they would not have changed the A Force at all, period. That's just, it was always going to happen, so I'm not mad at it. I just would have tweaked it personally. But I think a 9.8 is the grade that I would give it, which means again it's a must see for sure. So guys, we're going to leave you guys with that this week. Want to thank Mike Palma for joining us. Chris Pennybacker, thank you, sir, for joining us as well. Todd, enjoy your senior prom that you're going to, not senior high school prom, but the fact that he's old. He's going to a seniors person prom
Oh,
is
yeah.
where he's at, that he couldn't get out of, and
Is
he's
that what
going
he's doing?
to. We're going to go with that because I think it's funny, and I like to call Todd old, even though I'm older than he is. That's part of the gag too. But anyway, real quick, guys, for next week, for those of you who listen through the whole thing, for next week's podcast, we will be talking about Todd's Kickstarter, The Crew. Definitely be on the lookout for that stuff. It's coming to a Kickstarter near you. Todd will not say this as far as he knows that you guys are valuable members of the community, but he needs your support on this Kickstarter. We want to see this thing go through the roof. We want this to be so wildly successful. Truth of the matter is, the comic book is about all of you. It's about Mike and Chris and me and Todd and everybody. The longer the comic book run goes on, the more likely you show up in the pages in some way, shape, or form, whether it's flattering or not. So that being said, guys, we're going to leave you with that. Thank you so much for joining us. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful evening.